Live, Matt.
I think we're live, though.
I think we're good. This is Packed Lunch, ESPN Milwaukee. I'm Tony Cartagena, joined by the Athletics, Matt Schneidman. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to get into Packers. We're going to get into a bunch of different fun stuff here, but one of your teammates at the Athletic recently made some headlines. He goes by the name Shams. You might have heard of him. Mm-hmm. His screen time was up to 19 hours per day covering NBA free agency, and I'm just curious for you, let's say NFL draft, NFL free agency, you ever get close to that with your job, or what's your screen time like?
Oof. I've never, ever checked my screen time, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe you, but okay.
No, I haven't, actually. I sleep for maybe 6-7 hours a night.
Is that what it is?
Sometimes more. Other than that, like, I'll just catch myself just looking at my phone even when I know I have no notifications, just out of habit. But during free agency, draft, scrolling Twitter, I'll open Twitter, refresh it, and then 2 minutes later do it again just out of habit. So I would guess that my highest ever has probably been 18, 19.
Okay.
During those
so is that
tough
like
times of the year.
Peak Rodgers rumor time of the year? Okay.
Peak Rodgers rumor time of the year. I'd be at the poker table at the casino just refreshing my phone. But
so it's a nonstop gig. I feel like that's a good spot.
It's nonstop.
So is that a true story? Does that actually happen? You're at the poker table doing
that's
Rodgers
not
stories?
That's not when the Rodgers stuff happened. Like, I was at the poker table when Mark Murphy said at the girls' state basketball tournament this year, or whatever he said, and he went on and talked about Rodgers and basically spoke of him as a former Packers quarterback. I didn't have to write anything off that. But when Rodgers was officially traded, I was actually in front of my computer at Lambeau Field, so it worked out nicely. But I can't say that for all other instances. A reporter's biggest fear is being in a very inconvenient location when a story breaks and you need to do something. But nothing too drastic has happened to me yet.
So we'll get into talk about one of our teammates later, Jason Wilde. Yeah. He has a story where I believe, and Wilde can correct me if I'm wrong here, he missed a DM from Randall Cobb saying he was coming back to the team on a contract because he had gone to sleep like too early, which is a life that I do not envy. So credit to you and Shams and all the newsbreakers out there who are on top of things 24/7. Does it get exhausting? I know you're young, but like
a little bit. I mean, I would much rather be doing this than any other job. So
you don't want to be like an accountant?
No. I'll never complain about getting paid to watch the Packers and write about them and talk about them. At times, when I used to live in California covering the Raiders their last 2 years in Oakland, during free agency, I would set my alarm for like 4:30 a.m. because news starts breaking, stuff starts cycling in, especially from the likes of Schefter and Rappaport, around 7:30 a.m. On Pacific time. That's obviously 4:30. So the Raiders don't wait to make moves when they wake up. Like, their agents are always working things. And so I would have to get up at like 4. Is that pleasant? No, but I'll take it over any other job any day of the week.
Definitely. So for fans who may not, I mean, if you've been sleeping under a rock, Rodgers, Jets, Jordan Love, now Packers quarterback. Matt's been all over the story, and you really kind of made a media circuit, made a lot of headlines. When you, I remember watching the Rodgers introductory press conference in New York, and then you get introduced.
Like, how the hell is that guy here?
And that was before we had even met. I didn't know you were from New York. Yeah. And so it made a ton of sense. And a couple weeks later, the article comes out. You kind of break down everything Rodgers related. And it was with a phone conversation you had with him, correct? Mm-hmm. So we know what the article kind of said. We'll get into it. But like, take me behind the scenes. Did you leave a voicemail? Did you FaceTime him appropriately? Was it a text? How did that thing start?
Yeah, so the reason I went out to New York was I thought it would be cool to be there. Mm-hmm. But my end goal was to be, if I go there, show face, show him that I'm working on this story, I'm willing to make the effort to go out there, then maybe he'll be more willing to talk to me I knew I'd need him one-on-one for it eventually.
Okay.
Now, I highly doubted that he would give me that time,
for sure.
Even though we had a pretty solid working relationship over the 4 years I covered him.
Name-to-name basis, right? You saw him, he knows who you are.
Right. And so I go out there, ask the question. I didn't ask that question thinking, only I'm going to use this for my story. Like, I knew it was going to be aggregated, especially since he gave the answer that he did about FaceTime, and that was the first time anyone had heard kind of that.
Always FaceTime.
Always FaceTime. I spoke to him a little bit after that and said, listen, I'm writing this story, so on and so forth. And so the way I contacted him a couple of years ago, I think it was early 2020.
Okay.
I wrote a...
Shocking. There was Rodgers drama in 2020 as well.
Well, no. This is
before that?
No, so early 2020, I wrote a story I interviewed about 12, I think it was 12 small businesses from his hometown of Chico, California.
Okay.
And basically Rogers during COVID, the height of COVID, started a small business relief fund and essentially donated a bunch of his own money, spearheaded fundraising efforts, got directly involved in like really helping to save these businesses and not just like putting a name to it, like actually doing the work to, put himself to it and save these businesses. One, I don't know if people remember, but back in 2018, Paradise, California, the town in Northern California was ravaged by wildfires. There was one restaurant that was completely wiped out. All the people who work there now, or when I did this story, were survivors of the fire who lost their homes. And so that was one of the places I spoke to. And essentially it was to go and show, how Aaron Rodgers is saving small businesses in his hometown. I spoke to 12 places. So he never followed me on Twitter. But after I wrote that story, he DM'd me thanking me for the story.
Nice.
But since he DM'd me first, I can now DM him whenever I want. Gotcha. That's how Twitter works, even though he doesn't follow me.
Slide on it.
Because normally you're only allowed to DM people who follow you back.
Yep.
Not in this case. So, we would chat over the years, sometimes on Twitter, whether it be just, shoot the shit or me asking him stuff that I needed on background, off the record, for stories, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to think of what date it was. The story ran May 31st. So like about 10 days before, I reached out to Aaron and I wanted to gather all the information from the kind of the Packers side of things before I reached out to him.
For sure.
So I DM'd him. I can actually read what I sent him.
So that's how it started. It was a DM.
It was a DM on Twitter.
Brian Gutekunst, if you would have done that,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe we wouldn't be in this situation.
So on...
Can we get a dramatic reading of the DM release, wherever you're comfortable starting?
It's pretty long. So at 4:27 p.m. on Wednesday, May 24th, I'm paraphrasing here. I said, as I mentioned to you when I came to Florham Park, I'm writing a bigger story for next week on how we all got to the point of the Packers trading arguably the best player in team history and moving on to Jordan at the time they did. Basically said, I've heard stuff that I think you'll want to respond to. Mm-hmm. And as anyone does, they like to control their own narrative. If a hit piece, it's not a hit piece, but if a story is written about me and there are things said to a reporter in a manner that may not paint me in the best light, as was the case with Rodgers in the story, I would want someone to reach out to me and give me the option to respond. So I figured Rodgers might want to get out ahead of this, but also I figured there was a legitimate chance he would say, I'm good, just want to move on, and then go on McAfee and give his side, because that will reach probably a vastly larger number of people.
I think it was like, 600,000 people tuned in when he said he wanted to be traded?
About 3 hours after I asked Rodgers if he wanted to talk, he said, yeah, I'll talk. Cool. And it took a couple of days. We kind of went back and forth. He said he'd call me, and then we eventually connected that Saturday. Mm-hmm. In between his appearances at Taylor Swift at MetLife, I think he went Friday, Saturday night, and then he called me on Saturday afternoon. That was one of those instances where I was afraid to leave the house.
I was going to say, where were you? Like, what do you do?
I was just in my apartment because I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. Because
just in fear that he would call
Exactly. If I'm at the poker table, if I'm at the grocery store, I need to be ready. I can't send him to voicemail, be like, I'll give you a call back.
Yeah, you got to answer.
Exactly. So I was in my apartment. I normally just go to the grocery store to get food, but I was getting delivery to my place, so I didn't even have to leave my apartment. So he called me. We talked for 35 minutes. I said at the beginning of the call, if you don't want stuff to be on the record, just say that. I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you. Everything was on the record, and he said what he said. And that's the beauty of covering Aaron Rodgers. And what I'll miss is, a lot of athletes, Derek Carr for one, I covered Derek Carr for 2 years. Great guy, but he admittedly was very PC. Yeah. He didn't really speak his mind all the time. Aaron Rodgers does. And our goal as reporters is to, paint the picture of these athletes, these teams, and that's much easier to do when the athletes are on it. So that's what I hope came across in that story. And my end goal was really just to paint both sides of the whole thing. And sure, do I have my thoughts about who's telling the truth, what actually happened? Yes, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what Rodgers says and what the Packers say.
Do fans ever, I don't want to say get mad, because Twitter's one thing and what they say to you, but fans and athletes, let's just say, article comes out, you've talked to Rodgers, you're going to get a probably some type of reaction from him when he reads the final product, but also fans, say you're at the poker table, someone recognizes your name. Do you ever get a dirty look from a fan? Do you ever get comments in public?
I don't think, I've never gotten a negative comment about a story I've written, sure, there have been some of them, but like people aren't going to say the same thing to your face as they do behind a keyboard.
Right, yep.
Some of the dealers at Oneida Casino in the poker room made comments about the story. Since,
really?
They know
what kind of comments?
No, basically just like, oh, that was crazy what he said, or everyone took like the "I only talk to people that I like" line, and that was obviously the one that blew up. But there have definitely been people, just around town who make comments about stories and ask me stuff, but it's never really, "Oh, I hate your stupid podcast," or "You suck." They'll say that behind a burner Twitter account, of course.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. There is a little almost symmetry here. So for those that don't know, I used to produce Wildy and Tausch back in the day, and we did many sit-downs with Rogers from 2016 until I stopped producing the show in 2019. And I want to say around like 2018 preseason, an article comes out about him where a reporter did their homework. They talked to numerous former players and former teammates of Rogers.
Know which one you're talking about.
Yep, and it didn't really shine the best light on Rogers. And we sat down with him shortly after.
Yeah.
And when I tell you this man came prepared for this.
Of course he did.
But like notes. Like he had the quote and he had a reaction and the quote and the reaction. And I respected the hell out of it. To be honest, I was just like, look, if someone's going to put dirt on your name and you're going to be out there, at least respond in this way. And he did on our show, which was obviously awesome.
Exactly.
Shout out Willie and Tausch for making that happen. But yeah, he's a guy who's everything he does has meaning behind it, essentially. Everything from as simple as, what did you think of when he said the Jets won the Super Bowl, when he's at the Taylor Swift concert that you mentioned, which still very jealous. I want to see T-Swiz alive, but side note.
I hate Taylor Swift, but we can...
How do you hate Taylor Swift? No, let's sidebar this. How does one hate Taylor Swift?
I don't hate her.
Okay.
She's never done anything wrong to me. I'm just not a fan of her music, and the fact that people are so obsessed with her turns me off more to her music.
Shake it off, man.
I know.
Shake it off.
Nice. See, stuff like that.
So going back to Rogers, have you talked to him since?
No, I haven't.
Have you tried?
I shot him a text a couple weeks after the story ran. I forget about what. No response. He might have already been back in California, so I might have needed to FaceTime him, since that's when you need to FaceTime him.
His reception doesn't work. Wi-Fi
that's the thing. People have asked me, did you FaceTime him to interview him for this story? No, but he was still in New York, New Jersey at the time.
Oh, okay.
So he says when he gets back to Malibu, you have to FaceTime him, because that's where the service is bad. So no, I haven't. I haven't heard from him. He did say at the end of our call, he was like, appreciate you giving me the chance to speak. Looking forward to seeing how the story comes out. So, I mean, listen, it's not, whenever you write stories about athletes, whether it's a profile of them or a story like this, which has some more unflattering elements to it.
For sure.
Your goal is not to please people. Your goal is to be fair. And there are some athletes who think that it's a reporter's job to like pump them up. Aaron Rodgers gets it. He knows that, and we discussed this on the phone. He understands that it's not my job to just paint his side of the story. He understands it's my job to, tell both sides of the story, and he got that. So my only goal, I don't care if he's happy or unhappy with it. My only goal is that he just respects the work that I do. And that's why I think you can never be friends with reporters. You can be, or friends with athletes, I should say. You can be friendly with them, because our ultimate goal at the end of the day is just to be respected for the work we do, whether it's by peers, fans, players, coaches. That's really all that matters.
When you've done interviews, obviously, since the story came out, and we'll move on from Rodgers in a second here, like the pack. Like we'll look ahead. We'll talk about some other fun stuff, because I want fans to get to know you.
Absolutely.
Not many reporters are like, I think, open with like their personalized a little bit behind the scenes. So we want to hit on that a little bit too. But when you've done interviews about this article or things in the past, have people asked you to FaceTime him live during?
No, nobody has. And if you're going to ask me now,
I was going to say, what's like the odds that if like your phone doesn't happen to open to FaceTime that you would make a quick call?
I probably wouldn't do it.
Had to ask. Moving ahead. So the Packers 2023 edition of them, rebuild, not rebuild. You look at them, you've been around the team now. How many years have you been covering them, actually?
This will be my fifth season.
So you were there for draft night for Jordan Love. You'll be there for first day as the full-time starter for Jordan Love. I guess just give me like what you've seen, what you've kind of just experienced with the just Jordan Love experiment, Jordan Love tenure.
Yeah, I mean, very little in terms of things we can draw actual substance from. Like, I was there in Kansas City when he, on the surface, didn't play very well when he was thrust in for his first start against
that was
the
when
Chiefs
Rodgers had COVID,
after
right?
Rodgers tested positive for COVID. Now, when I talked to Goody for this story, he did say we didn't have a good plan for him that game. I liked what I saw, how he kind of faced all that pressure, all that adversity being thrown in on short notice and faced all that stuff. The Chiefs pressured him 16 times that game. They just blitzed every single snap and he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
I've seen a guy with promise. I think he's going to be better than people think. Not like a world beater for his first season starting, but he's athletic, throws a good ball. I will say there needs to be more consistency with, the spiral on his deep ball, I would say. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best deep ball throwers in NFL history.
You were a little spoiled.
So exactly, maybe I'm just spoiled.
Bit.
I remember when the Jets came here for joint practices a couple years ago. Our Jets reporter at the time, the Jets practice on one side of the Don Hudson Center outside, and then the Packers warm up on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And our Jets reporter came over to watch the Packers because he was like, I want to see what it's like a real quarterback. I want to see what a real quarterback is.
Who's the Jets quarterback at the time?
Zach Wilson.
Oh, yep. Yeah. That's JV versus Hall of Famer. So.
Exactly. So I think I have been spoiled, but I think Jordan Love has really impressed everyone in the building with the intangible aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be voted a captain by his teammates.
Okay.
It's not surprising that he's commanded the respect of the locker room like this. By all accounts, from what I've seen, he's been a guy who's gone about his business the right way. He was drafted into a very unenviable situation.
Yeah.
And he hasn't complained. He hasn't, requested a trade.
He hasn't said anything.
No, not really. And that's the intrigue here. We don't really know who this guy is. We don't know if he's any good. We don't know kind of his personality. We got to know Rodgers so well over the past couple of years. So I think even in instance as little as Jair Alexander jumping on Jordan Love's back during an interview a couple weeks ago, being like, QB1, this is my guy. Like that goes away. It doesn't go a long way, but step number one as a franchise quarterback is commanding the locker room and being a leader. You can't have a quarterback who doesn't have respect in the locker room, and I think that's step one, and I think Jordan Love has that.
So, speaking of quarterbacks in the Packers locker room, juicy story this past week. I want to say it was this past week or even the past couple of days.
I don't know what you're about to say.
Sean Clifford is what I'm going to bring up. You thought I was going to...
I don't know what you were going to say.
You got a scoop there?
No. I didn't know where you were going.
So, it kind of broke on social. Aaron Rodgers sends a housewarming gift to... Packers draft pick Sean Clifford, former Penn State quarterback, and it's an autographed jersey. What did it say? Enjoy my locker.
It said something like "Enjoy Green Bay in my locker" or something like that.
So, two-part question here.
Yeah.
When you moved from California to Green Bay, did anyone send you a housewarming gift? And then two, we just mentioned everything Rodgers does has meaning to it. Why? What is he doing?
Well, I don't think anyone sent me a housewarming gift.
Rude.
My mother might have, but no, friends. And I'm pulling out my phone because I'm pretty sure that was sponsored through Fanatics.
Okay.
Which is why he sent it to him. Because I saw Sean Clifford tweet that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to double check the tweet. They had that video, I think it was through Fanatics, where all the rookies sat down and players like Rodgers and Odell and Jerry Rice came on camera and wished them luck, and Rodgers was like, "Oh, how's my locker?" And Sean Clifford tagged Fanatics in that tweet.
Okay.
And Fanatics obviously does jerseys, so I think it was just Fanatics getting Rodgers to send him a jersey.
So, like a good reporter, did the actual research.
I don't think
where I just got sent this. And
Sean
was just
Clifford, not a bad housewarming gift. Thank you at Fanatics at Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
And if Rodgers was involved in that Fanatics video, both of them are being paid by Fanatics to do this.
So much to do about nothing, but it could be good headline news.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is sending that to Sean Clifford on his own will.
I kind of envisioned Rodgers going to Michael's, getting a frame, putting the jersey up, and doing that whole deal. It would have been a better story that way.
It definitely would have.
There's definitely some
Sorry to
shows.
put a damper on the parade.
There's definitely going to be some shows probably on the station that do the headline of Rodgers sends Clifford jersey, trolls them.
That's fine.
Take it from there.
I'll provide context if I'm asked about it.
There we go. There's the context. That's all you need. So those just tuning in, Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. You've been living in Green Bay. This is going to be your 5th season now covering the team. You're from New York. You covered the Raiders out in California. Then you moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to pull back the curtain a little bit because so very rarely in this world do you get extended time in interviews to really get to know people and talk to people. This is digital, something new we're doing here, so we can, kind of get into it a little bit. I'm from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say Green Bay isn't desirable, but like, how is it living in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
I mean, listen, people hate on me when I say I'm from New York City. I'm not. I was born in New York City. I lived there for the first 2.5 years of my life. Then I lived in White Plains, New York from 2.5 to about 6 or 7. And then since then, my family has lived in Wilton, Connecticut, which is a very small town in southwestern Connecticut, Fairfield County, about 45 minutes outside New York City. So just about the closest part to New York City that you can get in another state. So I have New York City tattooed on my arm here. So when people ask, I mean, my body originated in New York City.
So you're New Yorker.
So I'm from New York City, but I'm from Wilton, Connecticut. Then I went to school in Syracuse, New York, and I compare Green Bay to Syracuse in the fact that it's a smaller city that's rabid about one sports team. And I'm not saying people only live in Green Bay for the Packers, but it's the primary reason. I mean, the airport only regularly flies to the division opponents.
Yeah.
I think the passion here is something that's second to none during football season. This is an amazing place to live, even though the weather is not always desirable. I'm used to it since, as I said, I spent 4 years in Syracuse, New York. But during the offseason, it gets a little slow, especially as I consider myself a city boy. I lived in Oakland and San Francisco my 2 years after college covering the Raiders. I need stuff to do at all times. There ain't stuff to do at all times here.
Hence the poker table.
But there's a beauty to Green Bay. There is no NFL city like it in the country. That's why during the season, it's the best place to live.
For sure.
During the off season, when all my friends my age, I just turned 28, they are TV reporters mainly. As much as I love Rob Domofsky, Jason Wilde, Bill Huber, Wes Hodkiewicz, the other writers on the beat, they have families to tend to. And I'm not going to I have gone to the bar with Rob, but, I'm not, hanging out with him every
Are you not invited to the kids' birthday parties?
No, I'm not.
Come on, Wilde.
I know, exactly. I'm not hanging out with them every weekend. So my other TV friends, they're covering high schools. They're covering Brewers, Bucks, all this stuff. So I have to find ways to stay busy. And, I don't have endless deep pockets, so I can't just fly back to New York all the time and spend time with people that I know. But I will get back there every offseason to watch the Yankees.
Okay.
But yeah, it's different. It's a change.
Is that why you had the Hinge app open over there? Is that what that was?
I didn't have the Hinge app open.
I'm kidding, by the way. No, I'm just giving Matt a hard time because I feel like Green Bay would be a tough place in the offseason, especially you're in your 20s.
Exactly.
You want to travel, go other places, do other things.
Chicago's the nearest place.
Is that your where's if you have your pick outside of New York and you can just drive there, you go in Milwaukee, Chicago on the weekends?
Yeah, Chicago. But I've only gone there a couple times on the weekend. It's still 3 hours away. One of my good friends, Zach Mahoney, shout out. He lives in Chicago. He was the backup quarterback at Syracuse when I was a beat writer for the team when I was a student there.
Okay.
And we've become good friends. We golf in Chicago, hang out. And he started, I think he still holds the record for most touchdown passes in a single game for Syracuse football against Pittsburgh and Nathan Peterman. He also started games against Clemson and LSU when Leonard Fournette was there when Eric Dungy was injured. He was Syracuse's starting quarterback.
Okay, so he's got some stories.
Shout out Zach, yeah.
Nice. I'm just curious about this in general. So we talked about people saying bad stuff or good stuff about your articles, but when you go out in Green Bay, especially during the season, I know you're not friends with, but you can be friendly with players.
Right.
Let's just say you're at the grocery store, you're in the checkout line, guy from the team walks in. Do they say what's up to you?
So I have a funny story about that. So this was last June when I was flying from Green Bay to my best friend's wedding in New Jersey. So about a year ago.
Okay.
And I go to Green Bay Airport at 5 a.m, and Aaron Jones is there with his mom and his son.
Oh, his mom is the best.
He's putting his mom and son on a flight back to, I'm assuming, El Paso, where he's from. And at the time, we had just come off, 2 straight years of no locker room. I covered Aaron Jones in 2019 in the locker room. But, it normally takes a couple years maybe to get these players really on a first-name basis with you as a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, I talked to Aaron Jones over Zoom, but our faces were never on the Zooms. Like, we would say our names, or Sarah Quick from Packers PR would call our name, Matt Schneidman from The Athletic, and we'd say it. And, players like Rodgers and Devontae Adams, who we talk to all the time, they're attentive. They see us at practice, whatever, and after games when they're at the podium. But I didn't know that Aaron Jones knew who I was. But at 5 a.m. in the middle of the airport, he stopped me. Hey, Matt, how you doing? Where are you going? What are you up to? What are you doing this offseason? Hope you enjoy your day. Just
That's
like
awesome.
Everything. And one of the parts of this job, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything about these players because we only know them like 1% of who they are, mainly in the public eye. But you do get to know some of these players beyond just that, still nowhere near to who they are fully. But, when the microphones are shut off and you have these side conversations with them in the locker room, Aaron Jones is like the nicest dude of all time.
How many sirs did you get?
Oh, he calls everyone sir.
For those that don't know, Aaron Jones has a very military background. When I said his mom was great, she was in the armed services, so was his dad. And so every time you talk to him, he's very respectful. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And always happy.
Yeah, always happy. But yeah, that was one time where I did have an interaction with Aaron Jones. There was one time a couple of years ago where this was their rookie season. So back in 2020, I was at a bar downtown with a buddy. This was on roster cut down weekend before their rookie season. So they had a long weekend. They were allowed to be out. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus.
No, you're good.
But John Runyon Jr. and Josh Myers were next to me and my buddy at the bar. And I was just minding my own business. Listen, these guys don't want to be bothered when they're out. They want to be like regular people. One of my buddies was like, hey, John, this guy, he covers you. He covers the team. And Runyon was like, yeah, I know who he is. But like, I think I'm not, because granted, with other reporters, even on the beat, they're far more recognizable than myself.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is, these athletes know what is going on.
Yeah,
they're not going to always, give you the satisfaction maybe of referring to you by name if reporters get satisfaction out of that. But
you do understand though, like from your perspective, the stories that you have, like Aaron Jones knowing who you are, going and talking at the airport. The average Packer fan's life would be made
right, of course,
just to say what's up to him in the airport, much less be on a name-to-name basis.
Course.
So it's like, it's tough to balance that, right?
But at the end of the day, like, these guys see your face, especially when we're in the locker room, more than they see their own families sometimes.
For sure.
So if they don't know your name, they know your face. And some of the guys who, are more attentive or understand what we're doing and that we're just trying to, have a job to do and be humans like the rest of them, they know what's going on.
So you 5 years in, you just said you're 28. So at 20, math is really hard. 23, you moved to Green Bay.
Yeah, July 19. So I had just turned 24.
Okay, so you show up, facilities, locker room, that whole deal, and now you're on a name-to-name, colleague-ish type basis with Wildy, Demovsky, Bill Huber.
Yeah.
That's like a tough group to crack.
Absolutely.
And you're the young guy on the scene.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you showed up in a romper one day. Did that happen?
I don't think romper, but
romp him maybe?
No, it was like a tracksuit, I think.
It was a tracksuit? Okay.
Yeah.
My memory fades me a little bit. So Cam Newton made the romp him very popular.
My physique is not built for a romper. Let's be clear. I need to cover up because I'm built like a cheese stick.
He is part of Wisconsin. Look at that.
We're working on that. We're getting in the gym. But yeah, I wasn't so proud of that time. But sorry, finish your question.
No, I was just going to say that's in Wisconsin, those guys, like, they live and breathe Packers football.
Of course.
People think of them as Packers football. And then you come and you crack that inner circle. You're cool with all these guys. Like, I guess what was that like? Just because we all work with Jason Wilde every day. We hear him time and time again. But there's a very human element to him as well.
Absolutely. I think
let's embarrass Wilde for the next 10 minutes.
Coming into the Packers beat, it's such a historic franchise and organization. And you have guys like Tom Silverstein and Rob and Jason and Bill who have been covering this team for, multiple decades.
I told Wilde once how I used to listen to him do radio hits on the way to, like, first grade. Like, do radio hits about the Packers. And him, like, I think it pissed him off when I told him that. Because he would say on the radio, I just got engaged this weekend. And 20 years later, I know Paula and she's amazing. Like, it's just like weird how that works.
Yeah, of course. Now, I think I didn't come in being like, oh, I'm going to be the new kid in town. Like, But as a reporter for an outlet like The Athletic, you want to create a footprint, and you have to distinguish yourself, because there are these people with relationships and sources and connections in the organization from covering the team for so long. I have to do something to get my foot in the door. So I think at the end of the day, the most important part of the job is just showing up every day. And I think that's why, on a personal level, I'm great friends with Rob and Bill and Jason and Wes. But I think on a professional level, anyone respects someone who is there every day. They don't have to be the best writer, the best on radio, or the best on TV, but someone who's devoted to their job, doesn't BS it, is there every day, asks questions, shows up, makes an effort to know everything about the day-to-day happenings of the Packers. You're going to be respected, I think. And I think that's what all of us have in common is we're there every day. It helps that we all live in Green Bay or the surrounding towns. But yeah, it's been great getting to know those guys. They've been incredibly helpful in, helping me. I've gotten tremendous advice from all four of those guys.
Nice.
With connections, with, historical stuff with the Packers, just daily life about how to go about covering a team. Granted, it's not the biggest media market, but there's some of the biggest worldwide interest for this team. So no, I don't think it's easy breaking in and creating a name for yourself covering this team when there's such intense competition with people who've been here for a while, but it's been something I've really enjoyed doing.
So, and we'll wrap things up here in a sec, but when part of this Pack Lunch series, Gabe Nigel interviewed John Anderson from ESPN a couple weeks ago. And I think the money clip that came out of that was resurfaced, and you may have heard this before, where he accused not anyone by name, but Green Bay media of being too soft on Rodgers throughout his career. I don't know if you've heard that.
I did hear
I'm paraphrasing the clip. What is you've been doing it you covered him for 4 years.
Yeah.
You hear that the media was too soft on Rodgers.
Oh, I've heard that, especially when he went to New York.
Well, they're going to eat him alive.
They're going to eat him alive. The Green Bay media is nothing compared to the New York media. I disagree with that. I think, listen, coming from New York, I interned at the New York Post back in the day.
Back in the day? That was like probably 10 years ago.
It was 26, the summer of 2016, summer after my junior year of college. Last week. I think the New York media, and this is fine because you have to cater to what people care about, cares a lot more about the salacious stuff, the off-the-field stuff. And yes, some of that is important. But in terms of, the question everyone was saying, New York media won't be afraid to ask him about playing for Woody Johnson, when he doesn't when he's unvaccinated and Johnson and all that. I think at the end of the day, reporters should, the reason I paused there is because I was trying to figure out the right way to say this, but a reporter's job, and I'm not saying people are doing their jobs incorrectly, but is to report the information that people care about. And how much do people really care about, and I'm sure there is a subsection of people, especially in New York, who do, but who Aaron Rodgers is dating, or a controversial thing he says about the vaccine. We covered that. He said it on McAfee, we covered it. We wrote about it. But to some extent, I think, repeatedly pressing him about things that we don't agree with is unnecessary. I'm not saying that people in New York do that, but my bottom line, long winding point here is I think we here in Green Bay have a good sense of what's important to the reader. And just because we may not poke and prod about every little aspect of his life as the New York media might, or they might, see him out with someone and put it on page 6 or confront him about the vaccine. We've talked about that, and people have said, oh, they're soft. They didn't follow up when he said the immunize thing. That was a mistake on our part. We've all said that was a mistake on our part. He fooled us. But at the end of the day, I think it's more of just a reputation thing in terms of the media markets. I don't think we're soft. I don't take it personally if people say that we do. Midwesterners are far more easygoing and laid back and nice than people from New York. I know that because I've been in both places. But I would disagree that we're soft and have been too soft on Rodgers. I wrote a story after they lost to the Lions last year that Rodgers was the anchor that was sinking the Packers. I don't think that's soft.
Soft. You should have called them the grenade that blew up the Packers.
I think
that would have been a little harder.
Critical when warranted.
Okay.
Is how we've been, if I can speak for everyone.
So you got Jordan Love, you got Jones and Dillon in the backfield, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. Defense, has their stars as well. Should Packer fans have hope this season? Should they be like watching through their fingers this way? Like, what would your advice be to the fan that really just has no clue what the hell this team is going to look like on September 10th?
I would say we're in the same boat because I have no
enough.
clue what the hell this team's going to look like either. Listen, I think this year's team is going to really have to lean into the running game and the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has hijacked this offense, but let's be real. He's given more freedom to change stuff at the line of scrimmage than Jordan Love will be. The strength of this team this year is its running game, its offensive line, and it should be its defense with the amount of individual talent they have on that side of the ball. I've said the Packers will go 10-7 because of what they have in their running game, their running back tandem, and an offensive line that, when healthy, knock on wood, can be the best in football.
It's a plastic table.
It's a plastic table. Oh, okay, I'll find wood later. And on the defensive side of the ball, I think the key is Rashawn Gary. Like,
is he going to be good? Have you knee wise?
Oh, I thought you.
No, good. Yeah,
he's
talented.
good.
Knee wise.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
Okay.
Because you think about it, Elton Jenkins tore his ACL week 11 of the 21 season, started week 2 of the 22 season. Rashawn Gary tore his ACL week 9 of the 22 season. He could be back by week 1. I think the only reason Elton Jenkins didn't play week 1 was because they were playing on the same Minnesota turf that he tore his ACL on.
Gotcha.
Granted, they play on Soldier Field week 1, so Rashawn Gary might not play week 1 either, but you got what I'm saying. I think Rashawn Gary, here's one of the most telling stats from last season, I think. So one of my favorite stats to look at from True Media is pressure percentage. So percentage of pass rush snaps that result in a quarterback pressure. There was only one player in the NFL with a higher pressure percentage than Rashawn Gary in the first 8 weeks of last season. It was Nick Bosa, who won Defensive Player of the Year. From weeks 1 to 9, the Packers as a team ranked second in pressure percentage in the NFL, behind the Cowboys, I believe. From week 10 to 18, they ranked 28th. Rashawn Gary tore his ACL week 9. He is their pass rush.
Oh, that's an amazing stat.
They have corners who can lock people down. They have a linebacker in Devondre Campbell capable of playing at an all-pro level. Kenny Clark's a Pro Bowl guy. Quay Walker, when he's not getting ejected from games, is and I mean that seriously, is a very promising athletic player.
Is he facing anything into the season? He's
No.
good? Okay.
Yeah, he's good. And then, if Rashawn Gary's healthy, I think that's what makes this defense go, makes this team go. And that's why I think when people are wary about what this team will be, I don't think they should worry about the quarterback. I think he'll be slightly above average. They shouldn't expect him to suck. They shouldn't expect him to be a world beater. I think he'll be slightly above average. But how far this team will go will depend on if they can lean into that running game and if Rashawn Gary's healthy.
And then finally, because I've kept you here for almost 40 minutes now, but I've enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, of course.
David Bakhtiari.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of headlines this summer. I don't know if you have a story about him that
he's hilarious.
Like to share. He is hilarious. I guess where's the team at with him? What are you hearing? Like, if you listen to we can just say Craig Karmazin, owner of Good Karma Brands, on his Sunday Karma show, said he would trade David Bakhtiari immediately. Yeah, and that made headlines around here for about the next week. You're in Green Bay, obviously. Where's the team at with him, and what's his deal? Is he, because he's kind of slowed down a little bit?
Yeah, I think. Listen, when David Bakhtiari is healthy, he's arguably still the best left tackle in football. Granted, he hasn't been consistently healthy since the first. Well, he had, I think, broken ribs in the 2020 season, but then he tears his ACL. We've known what's happened in the last 3 years. I think Pro Football Focus had 2 offensive tackles last season who played, the qualified number of pass blocking snaps and didn't give up a sack or a quarterback hit. I think there were 60 some odd tackles who played the minimum number of snaps. David Bakhtiari was the only left tackle in football who didn't give up a quarterback hit or a sack.
Another amazing set.
Lane Johnson was the other one, but he's a right tackle.
Okay.
So when David Bakhtiari is healthy, he is still elite. If he can stay healthy, he can still make the not just Packers Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame. Before his knee injury, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He can still be on that. We've seen guys like Trent Williams, Jason Peters play really well into their late 30s. He's very, very much still in his early 30s. I think he's 31, 32. Yes, what he said about the rebuild was questionable. You can disagree with it, but hearing him kind of clarify, and I asked him, did anyone from the team reach out to you?
Oh, so you did ask him that?
Yeah, okay. Whether it be LaFleur or Goody and be like, hey, take it easy on
Chill.
this.
Yeah.
He gave me a non-answer. He didn't say no.
Okay.
He didn't say yes either. But at the end of the day, his point is, it's disrespect. When he says rebuild, for me and for you, I'm assuming, rebuild means you have no intention of winning. You're starting from scratch. For David Bakhtiari, rebuild means just rebuilding parts of your team. And he said when Aaron took over for Brett, I would have called that a rebuild. He said it's disrespectful to not call it a rebuild when you don't have one of the best quarterbacks ever anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not a reflection of Jordan Love. It's not a reflection of the rest of the team. I don't think it's just a reflection of the literal massive change they're going through.
For sure.
Now, what he said on Bussin' with the Boys about, someone would be justified in thinking we're not going to be good this year. That was maybe, I don't know if you want to say that. I will respectfully disagree with the fact that they should trade him.
Okay.
There is no better way to set, because what these next 2 years are about is seeing what you have in Jordan Love
For sure.
to determine whether he's the long-term option. When I covered the Raiders, they wanted to see what they had in Derek Carr long-term after he returned from his broken leg, when he was, I think, third in the MVP voting at the end of the 2016 season. They never really got a clear idea because they always had injuries and questions on the O-line, never had a great receiving core. So year after year, the excuse was, well, let's get this around him, then we'll see. Let's get this around him, then we'll see. Look what happened. They waited too long to get those pieces around him to see, and they came to the conclusion this past year that he was not the guy. Mm-hmm. You need to find out right now because you don't want to be stuck with Jordan Love longer than you need to be. The best way to set a first-year starting quarterback up for success is to make sure he stays healthy and upright. The best way to do that is to give him the best left tackle in football.
A future Hall of Fame.
He should not be traded, regardless of what he says, regardless of whatever. He's going to play. He wants to win. Mm-hmm. He wants to win a Super Bowl. However realistic that is, whatever. But sure, we can have a discussion about cutting him next offseason when, it would free up about $21.5 million in cap space.
Yep.
I think it was like $4 or $5 million if they did that this year. It's not worth it,
much,
considering what having him on the team would do. If he was shot, if he was done, whatever, then we can have that discussion. But like I said, he is still elite. He is extremely important for this team. Got to keep him on the team at whatever cost.
And could you chug a beer faster than him? No?
No.
Really?
Not even close.
Ah, man, I thought you'd have more confidence than that.
Nope.
Let people know where they can follow you. Is that Threads? Is that Blue Sky? What is that?
I don't even know what Blue Sky is. I'm not going on. I don't know what that is.
There's so many new ones now.
I'm not on Threads. We're just at Matt Schneidman on Twitter, The Athletic. I'm still kind of in my PTO phase right now. What is it? Training camp is...
Do you have a countdown?
No, it's just July 6th, training camp. First open practice is 20 days away. We'll have stuff a couple days before then, but appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Enjoy PTO. Hopefully we get to talk again soon before the season starts. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Packed Lunch today on ESPN Milwaukee's digital platforms. Have a good day.